Today's unemployment figures show the economy is moving in the right direction. The drop in unemployment is one more sign that the economy is strengthening.
Welcome back. This is Muck Rake, holding journalists accountable. It's Maalik Abdul on fault lines regarding Palestine.
The Palestinian National Authority confirmed their joint readiness and commitment to immediately work to end unilateral measures for a period of 3 to 6 months. It goes on to say that this includes an Israeli commitment to stop discussion of any new settlement units for 4 months and to stop authorization of any outposts for 6 months. The reason that I bring that up is barely hours after that meeting, Netanyahu actually says that there will be no freeze to construct settlement construction in the West Bank.
Your inconsistencies are glaringly obvious.
We're talking about Ben Gvir, but what do you think this means? Because it clearly Netanyahu is taking a rightward track when it comes to his government, but it's not just Ben Gvir. It's actually some of the decisions that Netanyahu is making himself. How do you think that this is going to play out on?
And Maalik Abdul is asking this of Benjamin Rubenstein of Mint Press News.
And I'll say on the world stage, because some of the things that, we can kind of turn a blind eye to some things, but what we saw what was it last week when they were trying to go after, I believe, 2 people and ended up injuring, what was that, almost 70 people?
It's like 100 plus, yeah.
Wow.
So it was basically like a Palestinian Crystal Nacht. It was a pogrom.
Oh no, but please go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, Netanyahu obviously is definitely one of the most evil people alive. Israel has agreed to a lot of things with third parties, other nations, and they never fall through. There's still no Palestinian state, and the Palestinian Authority is basically, doing the dirty work of the Israelis. And holding back the resistance. So I don't think it's too impactful. In terms of the global consequences, I think that there are factions within the Israeli government maybe that are wanting to slow things down because they've realized that Israel is facing an existential threat within the current global climate, because relations between Israel and Russia, for example, are deteriorating as Israel gets closer to Ukraine. And if we do end up in a, World War III situation, which we're getting closer to every day, if Russia sides with Palestine in a more material fashion, and you've got Hezbollah in Lebanon, and you've got Syria, and, the possibility of a third intifada, Israel can't win that fight. And we're moving in that direction rapidly. And so I think there are some factions within the Israeli government that recognize that. And there are some that, they have their delusions and they think, they're God's chosen people and that God will protect them. And, then there are people who just don't care. So I definitely think we're at a critical moment in this sort of history.
Yeah, and
you're right. It is a club. It was in Jordan.
In Jordan, yeah. So one of the people that was killed in the recent wave of violence this past week was a 27-year-old motorist.
And from the cradle, destruction of the Third Temple, Israel on the brink of civil war. Recent mass protests in Israel against controversial undemocratic judicial reforms have raised concerns about the potential for domestic civil clashes, which threaten the fundamental stability of the Jewish state. Yes, that's from the Cradle. Destruction of the Third Temple of Israel on the brink of civil war. As tens of thousands of Israelis rallied in protest against their government's judicial reform plan, the Israeli army conducted a major security operation in Nablus on 22 February, resulting in the death of 11 civilians and injuries to more than 100 others. The ongoing demonstrations against the controversial bill are becoming increasingly violent, with angry slogans and protesters' actions lending to the recent killing of a demonstrator by the Israeli police in the city of Beersheba in southern occupied Palestine. One defining moment of the protests occurred last week during the first vote on the draft judicial reforms, when protesters were able to storm the Knesset Parliament building before being removed by security forces, undermining the region's only democracy. The judicial reform plan is one of the most significant initiatives of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's sixth government. It aims to limit the powers of judges, which currently exceed those of Knesset deputies, and to allow for exceptional intervention by Knesset members in the appointment of judges. Netanyahu's opponents argue that the reform plans, led by Justice Minister Yair Levin, are a brazen attempt to politicize and undermine the judiciary in order to protect the prime minister from prosecution on long-standing charges of corruption and breach of trust. According to Chief Justice Esther Hayut, the proposed reforms will deprive the court of the option to override laws that disproportionately violate human rights, including the right to life, property, freedom of movement, as well as the basic right of human dignity and its derivatives, the right to equality, freedom of speech, and more. Former Chief Justice Aaron Barak expressed similar concerns, calling the bill the beginning of the end of the Third Temple, an apocalyptic expression, and fear denoting the beginning of Israel's demise. In his book, The Third Temple, Israeli reporter and writer Ari Shevet analyzes how in the state's eighth decade, the Israelis have become their own ministries, their own enemies. The Israelis have become their own enemies. With security challenges, one can cope, but the disintegration of identity cannot be overcome. In the corridors of Israeli power, the term treason is being bandied around more frequently, in parallel with National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and his call for police to deal more firmly with domestic protesters. Following Israeli President Isaac Herzog's warning that Netanyahu plan could push the country to the brink of constitutional and social collapse, the term civil war is being routinely used by the Hebrew press, with Haaretz analyst Anshel Pfeffer opining that civil war is no longer unthinkable. Over the last few days, I found myself in conversations I never imagined I'd have. But the topic is deadly serious. The various ways a civil war might suddenly break out and who would win, muses Pfeffer, asking ominously, will Israel's law enforcement security agencies and the military take sides? I think it's a bit late for that. I mean, it's like, it is a fascist government. When you have civilians, you have people walking around being protected by police to attack other people, that's fascism. There's no other way around it. Israeli affairs researcher Ismail Mohammed tells The Cradle that the notion of a civil war in Israel is no longer just a pipe dream hoped for by the occupation state's adversaries. Yedidia Stern, head of the Jewish People Policy Institute founded by the Jewish Agency, had said that Israel is closer to civil war than at any time since the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in 1995. And the withdrawal from Gaza in 2005. Both are events in which Israel teetered on the brink of civil war. The battle for judicial reform in Israel is not just a simple conflict, but rather reflects deeper issues that touch on the identity of the state and its social composition. The goal of some political groups, such as the coalition of Ben Giver and right-wing finance minister Bezalel Smotrich, is to change Israel from a secular liberal state and into a state based on religious law, to regulate religious observances from the daily conduct of Jews, or in Hebrew terminology, a form of halakha. This is also evident in the statement made by Haredi Ashkenazi, a lawmaker Yitzhak Pendrus, who on the 74th anniversary of the Nakba expressed a desire to blow up the building of the Supreme Court, which governs secular civil laws that are contrary to religious teachings. The polarization isn't only between secular and religious Jews. The ugly division between Eastern and Western Jews is also rearing its head. Ben Giver, for instance, has repeatedly called for reducing the power of the Ashkenazi over the state, demanding the inclusion of Sephardic Mizrahi Jews in Israel's institutions. A recent statement by Otzma Yehudit, MK Zvika Vogel, on the Hebrew Con 11 website reflects a significant shift from mere political differences to an existential clash between two different Israels. Vogel called for the arrest of the opposition politicians Yair Lapid, Benny Gantz, Yair Golan, and Moshe Ya'alon for fanning civil war, describing them as the most dangerous people at the present time in Israel. As Israeli affairs analyst Anwar Saleh explains to The Cradle, the issue is much more serious than a demand for equality and citizenship. Netanyahu's extremist coalition holds convictions that affect the very foundations of the state, such as a return to the elementary question of who's a Jew. The political demographic considers that secular Jews, who constitute more than 44% of Israelis, are false Jews, and that the current government, which is controlled by the religious right, who make up 20% of the population, represent the true spirit of Judaism. Saleh continues. This debate happening today, 74 years after the state of Israel was created, affects the very basis on which the Jewish Agency launched its immigration program to draw Jews to Palestine. It's noteworthy that over 50 investment companies have moved their business from Israel to other countries since the start of the protests, and this mass flight includes 37 technology firms. The development prompted Israeli Minister of Science and Technology Ofer Okunis to hold a private meeting with foreign ambassadors in Tel Aviv, during which he urged them to take a stand on the matter. In response, the tech firms released a statement refusing to repatriate $2.2 billion in earnings from their foreign operations back to Israel. The owner of these companies have also expressed concern about a drop in the country's credit rating because politicians are now appointing judges which they see as an unfavorable environment for business. This had prompted a number of investors to transfer funds in Israel abroad. Moses' staff. Even if Netanyahu today wielded the powerful staff of Moses, he would not be able to beat down the powerful domestic schisms tearing Israel apart. However, the one tool at the prime minister's disposal is to divert Israeli attention elsewhere, though this will eventually reignite conflict within. In essence, whether now or later this country will face its civil conflict. Despite its many differences, Israeli society is united in the perception fanned by their politicians and media that it's under existential threat from the outside. Observers speculate that Netanyahu only hope to quell internal conflict now is to manufacture a hot external threat. The occupied West Bank is seen as the least politically sensitive and most flexible option for action, according to political analyst Ayman al-Rifati. He explains to The Cradle that, unlike in the past, Gaza today is the theater in which Israel seeks to maintain calm in order to avoid military escalation during the coming Ramadan season. The increasing sophistication of missiles held in Gaza's resistance arsenals also poses too high a risk, with unknown and uncontrollable consequences that Israel may have to bear. The West Bank, conversely, is relatively unweaponized, with small arms concentrated in much fewer hands. And despite a steady stream of threats from Tel Aviv, there are no indications of Israel starting a war with either Iran or with Hezbollah, although the option of carrying out targeted security operations that elicit a reaction from those opponents remains active. And the recent attack by Jewish settlers on the town of Huwara in the West Bank city of Nablus is a byproduct of Netanyahu's efforts to mobilize Israeli settlements toward launching a comprehensive confrontation with West Bank Palestinians. One of the key objectives of this clash is to draw attention away from Israel's internal collapse.
It is obvious to the most simple-minded that Lokai is of an inferior breed.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
Are you blind, Commander Spock? Oh, look at me.
I thought you scientists were supposed to keep an open mind.
There's a difference between keeping an open mind and believing something because you want it to be true.
Your friend Spock is a logical man.
I find your arguments strewn with gaping defects in logic.
Most illogical reaction. We demonstrated our superior weapons. They should have fled. You mean they should have respected us? Of course. Mr. Spock, respect is a rational process. Did it ever occur to you they might react emotionally? With anger?
Doctor, I'm not responsible for their unpredictability.
You do not think like the others. There are no colors to your patterns of logic. There's only black and white.
Logical, unemotional, completely pragmatic. And we poor, irrational humans whip them in a fair fight. Now you'll find yourself back among us illogical humans again.
Which I find eminently satisfactory, Doctor. For nowhere am I so desperately needed.
Because she feels. I don't. All I know is logic.
Will you try to understand how we feel about our life here? About each other?
The whole notion of logic.
Emotions are alien to me. I'm a scientist.
You're gonna leave here without them? Run off on some wild goose chase halfway across the galaxy just because you found a discrepancy in a hydrogen cloud?
Doctor, I'm chasing the captain, Lieutenant Uhura, and Ensign Chekhov, not some wild aquatic fowl.
Mr. Spock, you have a remarkably logical and analytical mind.
Thank you. I prefer the concrete.